Rebecca Oblak, Ignite Church Freeport. When I was praying for you guys today, I heard the word, I just really felt the word partnership and collaboration. And when I looked it up, it says to just work with one another to cooperate. And so I just really want to pray that over you today. 1 Peter 4:10 says, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's grace. And so, Jesus, I just thank you for this meeting, and I thank you for this time, and I thank you, God, that the city council just collaborates and that there is creativity and innovation that springs forth out of this group of people, these men and women that work together so well. And God, I thank you for amazing solutions that are coming forth in this city council tonight. And God, that the warfare ends in Jesus' name. And so I just thank you, Father, for a smooth running meeting, and that God, you just bless every moment of it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Then we'll officially call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Alderpersons Borneman.
Here.
McClanathan.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Busker.
Here.
Brashaw.
Here.
Mysick.
Here.
And Berberet.
Here.
Thank you. If you could please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Alderman Brashaw. Okay, so we will start with item number 1 is the approval of the agenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Ross. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes from the council meeting on August 5th, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Berberet. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Public comments. Do we have anything written on public comments? Dennis, can you take a look? Yes. Council, if no one's in objection to it, there was a slight mix-up on the agenda for tonight, and Neely Erickson is here to speak on behalf of a grant. Does anybody have any problem with allowing her 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting? Neely.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Miller, for allowing me to address the City Council this evening. My name is Neely Erickson, and I am the Government Affairs Director for the Realtor Association of Northwestern Illinois. I am joined here today with members from the association. We are here to provide information regarding the $25,000 in grant assistance from the Illinois Realtors Relief Foundation grant for constituents affected by the flooding in 2019. As you know, realtors do more than help buy and sell homes. They live, work, and volunteer in their communities to help revitalize and improve them, especially during natural disasters. The Illinois Realtors Relief Foundation was established in 2015 to assist those living in communities affected by a natural disaster. Our members make voluntary donations into this fund to assist disaster victims throughout Illinois. The Realtor Association of Northwestern Illinois is here to aid those with questions who would like to apply. As outlined in a packet of information that will be provided to you in the near future, these grant funds may be used for monthly mortgage expenses, rent, costs of temporary shelter, and unreimbursed losses directly related to the disaster, such as an insurance deductible. All information provided through the application is kept confidential, and funds are provided on a first-come, first-served basis. Applicants can request up to $500 in grant support and are highly encouraged to apply before the September 30th deadline. Applicants have a few requirements. They must provide proof of residency, a copy of a mortgage statement, a payment coupon, or a lease. Also, they are encouraged to show photos of any damage to the property. And then one of the following is also highly encouraged, which is an insurance summary page, or it can be copies of a written claim or a claim that's in the process, or copy of a repair estimate from a contractor. So it's a very simple application process, but if your constituents have any questions or need assistance, we are here to help them. I am happy to meet with constituents one-on-one to help them complete the application at our Freeport office, and we have many Realtor members that stand ready to aid them too. Realtors are here to help your constituents through this difficult time and hope you will use us as an active resource and partner now and in the future. Thank you very much for allowing me to address the board on behalf of the Realtor Association of Northwestern Illinois. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Neely. Next is Tom Wallace. And Tom, if you could stand up to the microphone, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Miller and City Council members, as well as city officials. My name is Tom Wallace, and I represent Dottie's Cafe, located here in Freeport. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening in regard to the recent discussions around the city's liquor code and potentially include a sunset clause, which would essentially eliminate our business. We're grateful that the Liquor Commission recently voted 3-1 against any such clause and are here to ask the board to do the same. Respectfully oppose any such change to the liquor code, as this would be detrimental to not only our store but many other gaming establishments in the city. In fact, it would put us out of business. Dottie's opened in March of 2014 as the first gaming cafe in the city, and as a gaming cafe we generate nearly 95% of our revenue from gaming. We're a place for entertainment, do not represent ourselves as a bar or restaurant, and this allows us to deliver a unique gaming experience and coexist with other businesses that have gaming in the area. In our 5 years of business, we have generated over $170,000 in tax revenue for the city of Freeport. Combined with the other gaming cafe in Freeport, together we generate nearly 1/4 of the annual gaming revenue in the city. We're proud to be a part of the Freeport business community. We employ currently 8 Freeport residents at our location, and we rent space in a shopping center that, without our lease renewal, will have yet another vacant storefront to fill. For the past 5 years, it has been our pleasure to operate in the city of Freeport. It has always been our intention to keep doing so. Therefore, I respectfully urge the City Council not to pursue the sunset clause or any revisions to the liquor code, which would negatively impact our business and others in the community's ability to continue to thrive. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Tom. And next on the list is Brian Heiler.
Thank you. My name is Brian Heiler. I'm one of the owners of South Street Slots, and I am here to address you due to the fact that I know you're going to be looking at voting on a grandfather clause in order for us to stay in business. Not only us, but also I have part of the building leased out to Silver Creek Gaming Lounge, and between the two of us, without the grandfather clause, we would no longer be able to stay in business. Some of the things I'd like to mention is by bringing us into Freeport, what do we have to offer Freeport? I think our businesses can add a great deal to Freeport, not just with revenue. It's simply, say like me and my wife, a lot of times we used to go to Dubuque, rent a room, like to go to the casino, do some shopping. It gave us a destination, a place to go. A lot of people coming into Freeport, and I wished I'd have put a map on my wall when we first opened up a year ago, just to see, because we get a lot of out-of-state people, and we ask them where they're from, and we get them from all over. That way we could have seen where they were all coming from. But people that are coming to see the steam show or the fair or any of the events in Freeport are also looking for other things to do in Freeport. And we offer another venue for them rather than being able to go to a casino, which you can't. They've got a nice quiet lounge they can go to and they can experience. And then they can also go off to a restaurant, or if they want to pursue to go to a bar. But that's where we differ from all the rest of them, is we're just a quiet lounge, and that's what we're offering to Freeport. As far as law enforcement, I would have to say we've been open for 1 year. Yesterday we celebrated our 1-year anniversary. with everyone. We gave them sandwiches. We had root beer floats. Everybody had a great time there. And as far as law enforcement, we try and keep a real tight ship. We card everybody as they come in. We do not want to be a bar, so we have no bar stools. We're a quiet. We like, people comment that couples that come in and people that come in of how nice, how clean, how quiet, and it's a place for them to enjoy themselves. So I'm just asking you to hopefully, grandfather us in, welcome us to the city, and I'm sure we have a lot to offer you.
Thank you, Brian. Next on the list is Ben. I'm sorry, Ben Heiler.
Thank you. My name is Ben Heiler, owner and president of Silver Creek Gaming Lounge. We opened January, got our licenses, followed by all the rules and regulations, and, we're annexed into the city of Freeport. And now, obviously, we're going through whether or not you guys are going to grandfather us. So I know Attorney Cox drafted a little amendment to the liquor code. I don't know if you guys have read it yet, and correct me if anything's changed. But under this, it says, whether or not we would be grandfathered, licenses which were holders of a liquor license validly issued by Stevenson County as of the date of annexation of their property by Ordinance 2019-29, adopted by the City of Freeport on May 20th, 2019. So right there would accomplish, I think, what the city, is looking to do is kind of leveling the playing field, but at the same time, you don't want to harm existing business owners that followed the rules from the get-go. We're kind of at your guys' mercy right now, whether or not we're going to be in business or whether we're going to continue in business. We are a legitimate business. We don't want to open as a bar or restaurant. We're a gaming lounge. That's why we haven't opened yet. We're waiting on our gaming license, which we have gotten inspection for. Hopefully, in September we'll get that license. But I want you guys to consider, as a young entrepreneur, what a young businessman can bring to Freeport, in addition to this gaming lounge, but if we're forcibly annexed and shut down out of business because we have to comply by these rules that clearly we would not be able to accomplish. We don't even have enough room for 20 people to sit down. So think of what else we could be bringing into Freeport outside of this gaming lounge, and also the fairness. And, morally, is it right to just forcibly annex two businesses in and just not grandfather them under the existing rules and licenses that they had? Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Heiler's next. You pass. Then we have Stephanie Hammer. You're passing. Okay. And then we have Bob Reif. Riffle.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Bob Griffel. I represent a gaming parlor here in Freeport called 10 Pennies. A lot of what I intended to say has already been touched upon, so I'll try to be very brief here. I did attend the Liquor Commission meeting a week or so ago, and this issue of sunsetting was addressed at great length that evening, and I think a very concerted effort was made by everybody in that setting to really understand the underlying issues. Certainly understand that this is a complicated issue for everyone to consider, a lot of different factors to balance. And that balancing really occurred during that Liquor Commission meeting, and in a 3-1 vote, the vote was to not recommend a sunset clause. I think some of the reasons for that have been discussed here today. You've got 4 businesses that have invested quite a bit of money here in the community, been quite a bit of good for the community. My client alone has generated $185,000 of tax revenue that's gone into local governmental coffers. 10 individuals are employed by my client, 9 of whom are Freeport residents. So when you think about a sunset clause, real lives would be impacted, loss of jobs, loss of a business that's paying a lot of taxes, not only in the gaming taxes that come to the city here, but also liquor licenses and video gaming fees. So the economics of it would not be great from the standpoint of putting a sunset on those businesses. And then the trickle-down effect of losing so many good jobs and so many opportunities would not be good as well. My client's a good corporate citizen. They run a really clean ship. I think the other gaming parlors that you've heard from here can say the same thing. They meticulously adhere to liquor codes. It's a unique type of venue. People, if they want to go to a bar and gamble now, they certainly can do that. But there are a lot of people who want to do that in a different environment, and that environment is being provided by my client and these other 3 gaming parlors. Respectfully submit that a sunset clause here to put these 4 fully compliant legal businesses out of business would just be bad public policy. Again, the loss of jobs, loss of tenants. These are buildings that would probably suffer from not being able to backfill to the extent they are. And so for those reasons alone, we believe that it would be appropriate. The other thing is I think there's some complicated legal issues with the taking of these valid businesses and putting them out of business. No need to go down that direction because hopefully it'll be seen that there are really valid, good business reasons. And on behalf of my client, I respectfully request that you not consider and certainly not vote for a sunset for the opportunity for my client to stay in business. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, so that concludes public comments. We'll move on to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is considered to be routine in nature unless there's something that a member of the council would like to remove for further discussion. Seeing no further discussion on any other ones, the consent agenda consists of approval and place on file the Zoning Board of Appeals minutes from July 11th, the Foreign Fire Insurance Board minutes from June 13th, the Liquor Commission semi-annual report to the city manager that runs from January to June of 2019, cash and investment reports July 31st, 2019, financial reports for general, library, water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer for July 31st, 2019, the fire department report July 2019, the 2020 calendar that includes holiday, council meetings, and committee of the whole, and resolution R 2019-40 for the temporary closures for the streets for the homecoming parade that's set for October 2nd. The approval of the finance bills in the total of $1,141,255.43, and the approval of payroll for pay period ending August 3rd, 2019, in the total of $576,725.12. Is there a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Ross for the approval of the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Misick,
Aye.
Berberay,
Aye.
Borneman,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
and Busker.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 5 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-43. Could you please read this?
An ordinance of the City of Freeport approving and authorizing the city to enter into an addendum amendment to master tax exempt lease/purchase, leasing and finance. Nope, I missed a line. Purchase agreement, property schedule number 5, and related documents thereto with U.S. Bancorp Government Leasing and Financing regarding hook lift trucks.
Thank you. Manager Crow.
Thank you, and I may call on Director Carr to speak on this as well. This is the lease approval of the lease that we had talked about at the last council meeting for the hook lift trucks through U.S. Bank. This is the leasing of both trucks. The trucks are, so what they've done as part of this is they have set up an escrow even though the lease starts now because the delivery of the trucks are not until
early next year, so February, March.
So they're being built as we are, since the council been previously approved those, but this approves the leasing, and it's a 7-year lease as we go out.
Thank you. Questions, concerns, council?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. Director Carr, the trucks we have currently, are they sufficient to keep running until these others are delivered?
They'll need work over the winter, but they work satisfactorily this past winter. So
Okay,
the same trucks will be running again.
okay. And one follow-up. This one, I guess, is directed to you, Manager Crow. Has anything changed on this original contract since it was presented to us last?
That, it has not.
Thank you.
Anything further, council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2019-43?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Meissick,
Aye.
Berberay,
Aye.
Borneman,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
and Busker.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. Next is item number 6, which is the second reading of ordinance 2019-44. Could you please read this?
An ordinance authorizing the sale of certain items of personal property owned by the city.
Thank you. Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, the last council meeting, I thought the first reading was last council meeting. It was. Okay, I must have a different agenda. I apologize for that. The city has come up with another list of items that we've declared as surplus. A few of those have come from Community and Economic Development with the buses from Pretzel City Transit, as well as quite a few office-type materials with the printer cartridges and stuff like that. This ordinance would allow us to go out for a sealed bid on it, which we would hope to get onto a bid opening and a council approval in September.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Director Carr, I'm glad to see that they are getting rid of some of the surplus as they are no longer needed by the city. The funds generated from the sale of these items, is this to go to the general fund or to a specific purpose?
These go back into the general fund.
Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2019-44?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Meissick,
Aye.
Berberay,
Aye.
Borneman,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
and Busker.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 8-0.
Item number 7 is the first reading of ordinance 2019-46. Could you please read this?
An ordinance amending the zoning classification of property located at 1215 Armstrong Avenue in Freeport from M1 General Manufacturing to B3 Commercial and Wholesale Business.
Thank you, Director Carr. Or I'm sorry, Director Zupkoff.
Thank you, Your Honor. The owner of this storage unit business, which encompasses 2 parcels at 1215 and 1217 Armstrong Avenue, seeks to build a fence around that business. However, currently 1217 Armstrong is zoned B3 and 1215 Armstrong is zoned M1. Those 2 zoning districts have significantly different setback rules, which would greatly complicate constructing a fence around the entire business as it is now, as well as might complicate any future development at that location. The property owner seeking to rezone 1215 Armstrong to B3, so the lots are zoned the same, and storage units are a permitted use in both the B3 and M1 zoning districts. In our screening of this submitted materials, staff has considered the application regarding the required LaSalle-Sinclair factors that must be considered for land use and believe it meets those factors. Specifically, the existing uses of nearby property are similar to the proposed one. There are several other B3 zone properties directly to the south and west of this one with similar uses to these storage units and any other use permitted in B3. Property values of nearby parcels are not likely to be diminished by the proposed use. The use is not changing, and any future use permitted by B3 is congruent with the character of the neighborhood and should not diminish any property values. Relative hardships not likely to be imposed on adjacent and nearby property owners by reason of the proposed use. The use is not changing, and any permitted use in B3, again, would be in line with the character of the neighborhood. The property is well suited for the proposed use. Storage units are a permitted use in B3. The property is not vacant. There is a public need for the proposed use. The map amendment serves a purpose to allow the property owner to more easily redevelop this business with a fence, allowing for future improvements and security at this business. And improvements at this location will benefit the neighborhood as a whole. and the City of Freeport has thoroughly planned and zoned its land use per the comprehensive plan dated April 5th of 2010, and the proposed use is contemplated by such plan. In several sections, the comprehensive plan emphasizes the importance of economic development and redeveloping Freeport's existing commercial properties. The Zoning Board of Appeals voted 5-0 to recommend this. The Planning Commission voted 9-0 to do that, and we also would ask for approval of this map amendment.
Thank you. Council.
Your Honor.
Alderman Parker.
Make a motion to move this forward. Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Busker, to move ordinance 2019-46 on to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Is there any discussion, Council, before we move on?
Mayor,
Alderman Misick.
what type of fence are they proposing?
He's just looking at a 6-foot chain link fence, which is permitted by ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Just so you know, I'm all in favor of this. I think it's a great thing that they got it zoned, or, excuse me, approved by the Planning Commission as well as the Zoning Board of Appeals. Was there public notification to neighbors and/or a public hearing, just to make sure they are aware?
Yes, as required by ordinance, there was a public hearing held by the Zoning Board of Appeals. There was a zoning sign put at this property as required by ordinance for at least 15 days, and letters were sent to all of the adjacent property owners, including those across the street, as required by ordinance.
And follow up? And no complaints, correct?
There were no complaints we received about this.
Great, thank you.
Seeing no other further discussion, we'll move on to item number 8, which is the first reading of ordinance 2019-47. Madam Clerk, would you please read this?
An ordinance amending Chapter 242 Fire Department, Section 242.10G, probationary period, and Section 242.11 promotions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Freeport.
Thank you. Chief Liggett.
Good evening. This ordinance change is a cleanup that codifies our necessary edits as a result of the fire department reorganization and changes in class titles for the office of the Illinois State Fire Marshal, and then also amending the educational requirements set forth by the Board of Police and Fire Commissioners. These changes in titles and the certification levels for our state credentials through the office of State Fire Marshal include titles of Basic Operations Firefighter, Advanced Technician Firefighter, Company Fire Officer, Advanced Fire Officer, were all added to the ordinance adjacent to current class titles. The reason we have both is because some folks are credentialed under the old class title, some are under the new, and we didn't want to have them have to retake a class in order to be eligible for promotion. Regarding the eligibility requirements for deputy chief, this reflects the recent changes to the Board of Police and Fire Commission. There is an example or a detail of the old and new rules, and I would entertain any questions of the alderman at this time.
Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you, Chief. Looking at these old and new, basically across the board, are these all new percentages and things of that nature, and new language that has been dictated from, I'll say higher up down the road? We're not recreating the wheel on any of these. We're just adopting what's being passed at other levels?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Busker.
motion to move it forward.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman McClanathan, to move ordinance 2019-47 on to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Was it not McClanathan?
It's Parker.
It was Parker? Sorry, Parker. Okay, seconded by Parker.
That's all right. I did ask a question.
All right, you got to talk louder. Is there anything else, Council, that you'd like to talk about before moving on? Okay, then we will move on to item number 9, which is the first reading of ordinance 2019-48.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Freeport regarding the regulation of alcoholic liquor and mechanical electronic game. It amends Chapter 806, alcoholic liquor sales, and it modifies Sections 806.04 and 806.21.
Thank you. Attorney Cox.
This ordinance has not changed since we reviewed this at Committee of the Whole. We saw this last month at Committee of the Whole. It was referred back down to the Liquor Commission for their, actually 2 months ago, Committee of the Whole. It was referred back down to Liquor Commission for their specific evaluation of a sunset on the exemption for both specifically the annexed properties, which came in, which would be the properties on South Street, as well as an overall evaluation of sunsetting all exemptions citywide. And the Liquor Commission considered both of those issues and came back with a
It was a
2-to-1.
2-to-1 vote, but it was shared with me by a commissioner that was not there, that he would have voted with the majority, but the actual vote was 2-to-1.
So what you see in front of you tonight is exactly what you had at Committee of the Whole. No edits have been made to this. It's the same, and it effectively would, while it rearranges the text of the ordinance just because it got grammatically awkward to leave things the way they were. You see, if you look to the third page of the ordinance itself, there's a new paragraph 4 there. 4A would effectively cover the existing AV or WV licenses. Those are the existing grandfathered licenses. And then B just specifically brings in those properties which were annexed as part of the donut hole process and gives them the same exemption. And it does not provide for an expiration of that exemption at any time. And the one other change, just so by way of full coverage, there's a change to 80621, but that's more errata. We got a call from one of the catering licensees asking about video surveillance, and of course that's unintended, so it just corrects that.
So, and both Attorney Cox was the attorney for the Liquor Commission, and I attended to the council. So they considered 2 separate facts. First, the fact was the Liquor Commission made a decision that they would annex in the properties. The properties that were annexed would be grandfathered in, and then they, after the consideration, they said, all right, we don't want to treat them any differently from the other 2 properties. We'll bring them together, and they voted not to grandfather them, send that recommendation forward to council. There was the strong feeling from the Liquor Commission that these businesses had been established under good faith. There was, as we said, it was a 2-to-1 vote, and then the third member reached out to me stating that, and actually one of the member who voted against it stated that member would also vote for this, and they felt that since they had established good businesses within the city with good faith, that's why they did not recommend a grandfather.
Mayor, just technical purpose.
Not they recommended to grandfather, but not to sunset.
Thank you. There we go.
Yeah, so
That's what I thought you meant.
yeah, grandfather, but not to sunset.
Alderman McClanahan.
Do we have the mic on over with Attorney Cox? Because I often get
Yeah, I
texts
can't
saying
hear
we
him.
can't hear. And can you?
Sure. Is that better?
I think
Okay.
so.
Your Honor. You done?
Alderman Parker.
I think that's why we have a liquor commission. We have other commissioners. They've looked at all the issues, and I make a motion to move this on forward with them recommendations of the liquor commission.
Second.
Okay, council, we have a motion made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Busker to move ordinance 2019-48 to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Is there further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman McClanahan.
thank you. Attorney Cox, how long ago did the Liquor Commission bring before us the comprehensive changes that lifted the restrictions that led to the proliferation of video gaming in the city of Freeport?
The Liquor Act was changed about 2 years ago, year and a half perhaps.
And is it true that when that was presented to council, one of the rationales given to council by this commission was that for the 2, at this time there was only 2 established, I'll call them gaming parlors, that didn't fall under the requirements, that restrictions were going to be given prohibiting the transfer of that license to any other entity, therefore basically ending this type of entity after these two entities were finished with their use?
That would be correct, yes.
Has that ever been brought to council?
The,
That provision there in regards to prohibition on transfer?
so the prohibition on transfer exists by virtue of the way that the code is written and the way it remains written. So if you are the holder of the license, okay, that is personal to the entity or whether it be a corporation, LLC, or a human, whoever holds that license is granted basically an exemption to our requirements for the operation of a restaurant and the 50% food gross requirement. So that provision is there. So if one of these businesses would ever abandon their license or they would go out of business in any way, nobody could step in and assume that license. So by attrition, those would go away. Does that answer?
Could I follow up? I wanted to clarify, because when we were here a few meetings ago, I believe it was said that, I think it was in response to a question that Alderman Borneman had said, was saying that there was not such a prohibition. So it's your opinion that once these entities in their current forms have ceased to make use of this and are looking to either close shop, transfer ownership, things of that nature, the new entity would not be granted a license unless they comply with the 50% rule.
Right. In the event that
accurate?
more than 50% ownership of a license is transferred, the way that the city handles licensing, it requires a new license. So you can change shareholders here and there, but if there's an actual change in the control structure of the entity, such as a sale, then that would void the existing license. There would need to be a new one.
And to clarify, so that everybody understands that that the liquor license is tied to two things. It's tied to both the building and the owner. And if the owner changes or the building changes, the owner can petition the state to transfer that license to another building, but that's tied, that owner is not guaranteed. If it changes, liquor licenses are not guaranteed, and in this case, gaming license would not be guaranteed to be renewed because of the change of ownership. And that's true with all of our liquor licenses and true with all of the licenses as the ordinance is written.
Yes.
Follow-up. I want to be very clear on this. So with any change of ownership, with any, that's in excess, I think, 50%, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So any change of ownership in excess of 50%, any change of location, even if there's some dispensation given by the states, that will not be sufficient for our purposes. Is that correct?
Location is a little trickier. That's actually discretionary.
Okay.
So we do have a process for changing license locations, but the licensee has to come in and ask for that. So that would really be up to, yeah. It would,
For location only.
for locations. The ownership is not. The ownership is black and white. If it's more than 50%, and there is, the new ordinance actually provides for transfers over long periods of time where you have multiple shareholders and things like that. But if it's a sale, that would, of more than 50%, that would terminate that license. A new one would be issued, and that would not be exempted.
Grandfathered. Yep. It would not be. So under our licenses, because those, as soon as they would sell it, it would be going to a new owner. That new owner would then be required to meet our 50%.
Yes.
Additional follow-up, if I may. And so, in the end of the day, the two new entities are going to be treated at the same level as the two current entities, and there is a mechanism for these exceptions. There is a termination date for these exceptions.
There is. I mean, they're sort of self-sunsetting, but that's within their own control. If they operate under the same corporate structure for 100 years, that would be the case. But that's not the way of things. So it's sort of sunset by attrition is the way we have it currently.
Additional follow-up? All right. Now, I don't think it's going to change the analysis too much, but just to be clear, because I hear this comment multiple times. It's your understanding that an entity inside, even if it's a donut hole, but inside a donut hole, inside of a municipality, needs to be in compliance with the municipality's rules. Is that correct? And also
Prior to annexation or post-annexation?
prior to annexation.
Prior to annexation, that's very murky. There's a collar of control which goes to comprehensive planning, and that's not a black and white answer as to whether or not compliance needs to be had with, particularly with licensing. Zoning is a different thing, but this is dealing with licensing authority, not so much zoning.
And what's your opinion on the a mile and a half requirements under state statutes? What's your interpretation of that?
Under the licensing authority?
Either licensing or zoning.
I think without doing significant research, I'm not comfortable giving an answer on zoning. Licensing, that's going to be pretty much black and white. That's going to be, once you're outside, you're subject to county licensing, and once you're inside the city, it's city licensing. They're two separate powers.
And as a general rule, would you agree that the state, or that a municipality has significantly broad, and this has been upheld on many levels of appeal, authority in regards to their licensing powers?
Oh, very, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion, council?
I have a couple questions.
Sure,
That's
Alderman
all right.
Borneman.
Attorney Cox, I have just a handful of questions here. So when you're referring to the owner, you're referring to the owner of the business or the person who has the liquor license in their name, or what's the difference?
Good question. The owner is whoever the licensee is. That can be a natural person, that can be a business entity such as a corporation or an LLC, or it could be a partnership. So in the clerk's office, there is, the license is held in the name of someone or someone.
Or an LLC or a corporation.
Right.
We have some that are held by LLCs and some by held corporations.
So the licensee would be, if it is that corporation, or a corporation or an LLC, there are specific provisions dealing with the transfer of ownership interests in business entities. Obviously, if it's a human, that's easier.
And I use an example. Two Pizza Huts were bought by a different corporation here. When was it? 9 months ago, within the last 9 years. So that corporation, the new corporation that controlled it, had to come in and reapply for their liquor licenses, even though it's for beer and wine. So that that didn't automatically transfer because the corporation, the overarching corporation, that sold from one to the other.
And I should note that it's not unique to the city of Freeport, but it's a city of Freeport requirement. The state does not have such a requirement. So under the state would say, if it's transfer of shares in a corporation, well, it's still the same corporation. So there could be continuity there. The city has had for a long period of time just a standing rule that if more than 50% changes, then that's a new license. And I think that, without going into the long story, that was a matter of those licenses taking on a value of their own because they could be transferred absent payment of a new license fee.
So I guess what my question is, if the liquor license is in the name of an LLC and membership changes in that LLC, if more than 50% of that changes, then you would run into the thing we were talking about.
Then you would need to get a new license. It would trigger it would trigger a brand new license.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Busker.
Attorney Cox, would that also include the possible death of a shareholder and the other half would inherit that? Shareholders, would they need to get a new license at that point too?
Also a great question, and no, that does not trigger a new license. If there's a transfer of shares among immediate family members, then that's exempted for exactly that reason. If you had a husband and wife that own, you don't want to terminate a family business in that manner.
Thank you.
So it only deals with the event of a sale to a third party. transfer in some form to a third party.
Any other further questions, council? Thank you, Attorney Cox. We will move on to item number 10, which is the adoption of Resolution 2019-41. Madam Clerk, could you please read this?
Excuse me. Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving an agreement with Fairgram to provide civil and environmental engineering services for the remainder of 2019 and through the end of 2020.
Thank you. Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Last year, the council approved a master service agreement with Fairgram that allowed us to design a few sanitary sewer and water projects that we were allowed to throw in the queue for the IEPA loans. The IEPA loans also come with their share of loan forgiveness. So in such a manner, we had laid out what appears to be about 7 different projects last year under that, with the design of the well number 11, the Fields of Freeport design, the water treatment plant, the phase 2 topographic survey, several IEPA loan applications, some construction staking for South Float, and then the platting of the Danfoss sewer easement. These projects, which in their design are very large projects or very deep, or very specific to surveying needs, the city doesn't have the manpower to take on anything that large or the surveying of it, with that being the license itself. So with that, moving forward both this year and next year, the city would like to enter into a master service agreement with Fairgram for very similar type projects for a total to not exceed $300,000. That, however, is a very large number, though the consultant will be paid on a time and material basis, so there's the potential that we wouldn't get to that if that time is not needed.
Thank you, Director Carr. Questions, council?
Madam,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. I was just going to clarify for the public, if I get this correct, let me know. So basically, we are entering a contract with Fairgram to provide their engineering services as we need them and paying as we go up to the amount of $300,000 to engineer for these specific plans that should be shovel-ready and therefore give us a greater chance to acquire the loans and forgiveness for those loans, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Alderman McClenathan.
Thank you. Kind of sound like a broken record on the engineering services, but I know they're not subject to bidding because, you know, the professional services, things of that nature. How did we establish a price points for this contract?
We have a couple projects that we have hours that we have been kind of looking at back and forth moving forward, as well as, so we kind of see where we were at last year. Last year was a $200,000 agreement, so we're kind of looking at about a year and a half. So price-wise, that was where the $300,000 came from.
Here, one of the things that, because environmental water, sewer, storm sewer, are very specialized designs, you're finding more and more communities across the state are reaching master service agreements because the revolving loans we can break them up and they're beyond the scope. So it's many of the communities use. I know your question is why Fairgram and do this, why not somebody else? And the reason we wanted to go with Fairgram is because they're the ones involved in our planning and design of our current water treatment facility. This will be for our next well, Adams, and all the other work that actually we've already approved Adams. It'll be the next well, the next facility out at Willow, shut down a brick, SCADA work that we're doing going forward. So because of their familiarity with the water and wastewater treatment facility, that's one of the reasons why we went with them as well.
Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. No, I'm very comfortable with the organization, our history working with them, and the services they provide. As we approach each one of these, I'm just kind of looking at it case-by-case basis as to, okay, how do we arrive at this contract for these services? What are we getting out of it, and things of that nature. But in regards to the local entity and the services they provide, very pleased with that.
Alderman Burberry.
Clarification, that says the services are through the end of 2020, which is a 12-month period, and the rest of 2019. So is this the short fiscal year and a whole new fiscal years?
So it is.
Okay.
So we use the last of our agreements, the last of the 200,000, and we're out of our last master service agreement. So Dennis and I had talked, Director Carr and I had talked with Adam about bringing out forward
About
another one.
4 more months plus 12, about 16-month period. Okay, so it might be hard to compare this to last year's projects, which is a 12-month period.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. So I understand why last year's was 200,000. This year's is more. It's more work, and it's a much greater scope of time as well. I guess my question is for Director Bucas. Has this been in our budget? And I'm sorry if I didn't review all the multiple pages of the budget.
It will be in the budget.
Thank you. Madam Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
I'd like to make a motion for the adoption of Resolution 2019-41.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Parker for the Resolution 2019-41. Is there any further discussion, Council? Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the adoption?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
Burberry.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
And Busker.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted 8-0.
Next is item number 11 for the adoption of Resolution 2019-42. Madam Clerk, would you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving an agreement with Fair Graham to provide civil engineering services related to sanitary sewer installation on Oak Hill Drive, Hillcrest Drive, Lawn Place, and Sylvan Court.
Thank you. Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First question I know is going to get asked is why isn't this in the master services agreement? So we'll just take care of it at the moment. We already have a list of potential projects for the master service agreement that we have looking forward. This one kind of came out, I want to say a little bit out of left field, just based off of some complaints from some people in that area, as well as some past needs and desires of other residents over there. So this project kind of sits outside of that realm of we don't want to send it in for IEPA loan funding. I mean, that's not the intent of a project kind of like this, as much as this would be more of a locally funded project. So this proposal would be to put in for the design work for the sanitary sewer on Oak Hill Drive, Hillcrest Drive, Lawn Place, and Sylvan Court. That area, the residents are beginning to have some septic failures, so they've reached out to us on is this something that we can kind of look at? And so the only way that we can actually get this stuff put in the ground is to get a design on it. With the size of this and the amount of survey that was going to be needed to do it, it's just outside of our capabilities and staff. So we do look to come into an agreement with Fairgram for them to do the design, both the preliminary design as well as the bid documents for this, for a total base fee of about $87,800.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Director Carr, I see it says utility and topographic survey, $32,000, preliminary and final engineering design, $50,900, and construction bidding, $4,800. Can you explain what the construction bidding part of this is? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, so the construction bidding is putting together a engineering estimate for it, as well as some of the contract documents for the specific bid letting itself, as well as putting it out for bid, and then answering any kind of questions that were to come in regarding the plans themselves. It also covers any kind of small addendums or addenda that might need to be processed in it. Then they also would make their recommendation to the staff here on the bid results themselves.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman McClenathan?
My voice is a little weird tonight, but looking back at like Sylvan Court and some of those areas on here, and I don't know all the lingo or the terminology on this. What's the current? I seem to recall that decades ago, as these neighborhoods developed, like certain landowners had to build a system or a tank or whatever, and then as of the other properties kind of were developed, they had to plug in and buy into the system or things of that nature. How does sanitary sewer installation in these areas basically replace what's currently in there, and is there any accounting for whatever the prior requirements or prior agreements were with any of these entities?
Yeah, so all these houses are all on private septic systems. The proposed would run down the center of the road, and then as the homeowner would want to attach onto it, they would have to pay their fee to the city for their connection fee. Then they would be able to run their line out to the road. With all the work being done, as deep as it is, we would look to have each of their laterals kind of run out, so that way that we get them out of the road. So that way in the future, anytime they would want to tie on, we wouldn't have to rip up the road that's going to be put in place.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Bradshaw?
Thank you. Could you explain to me, if the sewer lines are brought in the road in front of the property, but they are not connected to it, they don't pay the sewer fee at that time, only after they connect, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
One more follow-up. And that is an option of the constituent, that they only connect when they are ready to?
If there's sanitary sewer available to the homeowner when their septic sewer fails, they have to connect to the city sewer.
That's how I understood it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Misick?
We're looking at, in front of us, the engineering design for the work. Now, I know this may be a difficult question really to answer, is when the design comes back. Now, normally the engineering part of it is a certain percentage of the work being completed. Would you have a ballpark of the work that needs to be done in this area?
If we were to use, I think a very conservative estimate would be this total base fee would be about 10 to 12%. We'd be looking at somewhere around $900,000 to a little over $1 million project. But I have not done an estimate on the numbers. That would just be kind of a ballpark based off of kind of that breakdown.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, let's see, I think, thank you. I would think it's probably more like maybe a 5%, where we're looking at roughly $1.8 to $2 million for that construction project, construction phase.
Any other questions, Council?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Borneman?
what funds are going to be used to pay for this? And then if we have the final project, do you know what funds would be going? Maybe that's for Director Bucas, if not for yourself or Mr. Crow.
So these would be coming out of the capital funds that we're currently collecting. That's one of the initiatives as we go forward, is we're gathering that capital money. So the $34 that capital fee on a monthly basis that people are paying into the water and sewer fund.
Thanks.
Mayor?
Alderman Ross?
Yes, have any bids been sent out or anything like that, or will the city be doing it themselves?
This is strictly the engineering design.
Okay.
This is, so, when we talk about engineering cost estimate, You know, you're talking about, we're swag here. I mean, it's purely guess. I mean, we can't, if we start talking about fees and guesses in here, you know, and why I want to caution, okay, and I'll use an example. So the Detmer Bridge gas was $600,000. We're well over 2.4 million. So until the engineer design is done, and they're done, giving a on-the-floor guess here really gets us in trouble. So,
Because you never know where mussels and bats will show up.
yeah.
Or for this project, bedrock.
Or bedrock. Well, and that's what we're running into on a lot of our projects, like the Float Street project. We ran into bedrock across, so we're behind and running up on our contingency fee because of the bedrock.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. My question is about bedrock. Can you explain to me what that is? I'm not familiar.
Yes, that is at a certain depth. There's a layer of rock. I mean, sometimes it's 10 feet, sometimes it's 15 feet. Just depends on where you're at. It's really hard. You can't really dig through it, so they have to bring out a breaker on the hoe. So when normal construction is just digging up the dirt or the soil and putting it, and then putting something back, bedrock is you're actually hitting that substrate under the ground that you really can't do anything with, so you have to remove it. These over here, kind of, when you start to get close to creeks and streams and rivers, you start to see some of those hills. Some of those hills are because the bedrock and the way that, it has formed over the years. So kind of guessing where this is, that's kind of that, unless you do cores in the exact location of where you're wanting to put the sewer itself.
Mhm.
You can miss, you can hit, you can scrape on top. You can kind of, sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you pay the extra fee it is for that rock removal.
One more follow-up, Mayor. Thank you. So these engineering services are only for the public sewer system. They're nothing to do with the roadways or fixing the roadways after the sewer system is done?
With how this road is kind of put in, the design of the road is already there. I mean, the existing topo is what the proposed road would go back as.
We would not want to resurface these roads until we put this sewer in, because then that's where we've gotten into problems in the past. Is we put water and sewer into roads that have already been resurfaced. So the idea is, because we are beginning to see, and we've only had 2 residents right now, but we're beginning to see a failure in the septic fields in this area. We want to get ahead of this, get the design done, and get it bid out, so we can at least get the best path here, so that when we get ready to resurface these 4 streets, we already have all that in place.
Madam Mayor? Thank you. I appreciate all the explanations. Some of my constituents are some of the constituents that have turned in the complaints of not being able to access those city sewer systems. And also a lot of them have the degraded road system there down in the Sylvan Court area. So I thought I better ask some of those questions tonight as well. With that said, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-41.
Second.
Oh, excuse me, 42, Mayor.
I'll second.
Okay, unless there's no further discussion, we have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman McClanathan, to adopt Resolution 2019-42. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
Berberay.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan. Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
And Busker.
No.
The resolution passes 7-1.
And next is item number 12, which is the adoption of Resolution 2019-43. Could you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing execution and amendment of Downstate Operating Assistant Grant Agreement for fiscal year 2020.
Thank you. Director Zupkoff.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an annual agreement for the state funding for Pretzel City Transit, the Downstate Operating Assistance Program. Council previously approved the grant application. This is approving the agreement. As I said several months ago when we approved the fiscal year 19 agreement, it's essentially the same document as fiscal year 18, just substituting fiscal year 19. Again, this is essentially the same document as fiscal year 2019, just adding now fiscal year 2020.
Questions, council?
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan?
motion to approve.
Second.
Unless there's any further discussion, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Busker for the adoption of Resolution 2019-43.
Brashaw. I'm
Aye.
sorry, Mayor.
Aye.
Misick.
Aye.
Berberay.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan. Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
And that resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 13 is the adoption of Resolution 2019-44. Could you please read this?
Resolution of support to apply for the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG program grant for residential housing rehabilitation.
Thank you. Director Zupkoff.
Thank you, Your Honor, and this will really apply to this resolution and the next, both of which have to do with this Community Development Block Grant application that we're finalizing in conjunction with our grant writer at Region 1 for the CDBG Housing Rehab Grant with a project area that includes the neighborhood surrounding the eastern section of West and Galena Avenues. We're asking for $500,000 in CDBG funds to perform rehabilitation of 11 privately owned single-unit owner-occupied homes, including but not limited to, again, roof repair and replacement, window replacement. It also allows for foundation repairs, accessibility modifications, interior wiring, furnace, central air conditioning, water heater, plumbing repair, sewer lateral and incoming water line replacement, insulation of attic and walls, repairs to floor and subfloor, and even more than that. We selected this project area for this grant application for several reasons, including it's of course at a highly visible part of town, the intersection of West Avenue and Galena Avenue, two of our busiest thoroughfares in Freeport. Looking at the most recent Illinois Department of Transportation, or IDOT, traffic counts, approximately 20,000 vehicles per day drive past this neighborhood every single day at that eastern intersection of West and Galena. You know, that's a lot of eyeballs on these houses, and improving the curb appeal and housing stock of this neighborhood, one of our most highly visible, would help the community as a whole. And additionally, in the community development staff's day-to-day operations of performing code enforcement and condemning properties, we have decided that although this neighborhood, you know, has its share of blight, some of the properties need some help, it presently lacks widespread blight and condemnations. I'm aware of actually just one condemnation in this whole project area, and it was condemned in 2018, you know, so very, very recent, but perhaps evidence that if, you know, something doesn't happen maybe several years down the line, there will be more condemnations necessary here. And some monetary injection of funds into the neighborhood, such as from this grant, could be the difference, again, of the neighborhood seeing continual decline over the next several years, or improving and becoming an even nicer, safer, and more attractive place to live. As a part of the grant process, we performed required door-to-door surveys in this project area to maximize resident participation. Additionally, each time while surveying, we provided residents with invitations to the public hearing this evening for this application. I believe we had one show up, and we will receive, I believe, an additional half a point for her attendance on our grant application. Additionally, to gain maximum application points, we have identified and received letters of support for this application by area IDPH-led contractors interested in working on this project, who have also supplied the required rehabilitation estimates for properties. We have a lead-certified housing inspector enrolled to work this project with us, and the application has been written by our grant writer to specifications required by DCEO and contains census and low to moderate income LMI information to optimize the application's points also. Another way to maximize points, which has to do with the next resolution is by pledging the maximum required $20,000 in matching funds. Technically, there is no match required for this grant, but the state does highly recommend some financial commitment, and additional points are given to applications for each $5,000 increment matched up to $20,000. And we would ask for approval of the resolution of support and the resolution of financial commitment for this CDBG grant application.
Council?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Borneman?
if I understand this right, the financial investment from the city on this would be $20,000,
Yes,
and the return in a grant is $500,000?
that's how much we're asking for, yes.
And if the city doesn't receive that $500,000, that's just going to go to another community?
That's right.
So it's not like it's money that would we could spend elsewhere. This is money we're receiving from the state.
Yes, for this purpose.
Is it the state or federal?
It's federally funded, administered through the state.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Oh,
Go ahead.
All I have, thanks.
Alderman McClanathan?
Appreciate the questions. It's just some similar questions I don't have to ask now, so thank you. Just a few areas to supplement then what he had covered in regards to that. We've been, over the last, 4 years or so, been trying to aggressively handle demolitions, and we've often talked about, when we're doing the demolition processes, how do we help preserve other residences from getting to that danger zone? Would you view this, if we were awarded this grant, would you view this as a good key and tool for us in helping prevent a segment of the community from potentially falling into that area?
Yes, this is absolutely what that aims to accomplish.
All right. Well, Alderman Boardman covered everything else, so no further questions.
Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw?
thank you. I see here that it's supposed to cover up to 11 privately owned single-unit owner-occupied homes with very specific items that they could cover, correct? I mean, most of it's codified items like wiring, roofing, replacement of walls, windows, that kind of thing. And I'm sorry, follow-up? Thank you. Are we looking for a dollar match from the constituent for that privately owned home then?
There's no match from the constituent.
That's good.
There is
What?
a
Excuse me?
residency requirement that for a period, they have to stay in the home for a period.
Yeah, and this is only for owner-occupied properties as well. I should
Yes.
state, not for rentals.
Right, and I did read that.
And what's the
Privately owned.
residency requirement then? How long do they have to stay in the home?
I'm sorry.
How long do they, it's 5 years, they have to stay in the home for 5 years after this work is done, so.
One more follow-up?
Alderman Brashaw?
Thank you. I did understand that was owner-occupied, is what I said. For up to 5 years then, and if they don't comply, how do they recoup those funds?
It's a commitment letter. I would have to go back over through the program.
I can actually answer that if it helps. It's actually recorded against the at least my previous history being involved with these, it's recorded against the property, and if the property is transferred, then it comes up as part of the title search. Now, there are occasions in which the property is transferred outside of a transaction that would be closed at a title company, in which case, it's possible that those funds, could not be recouped by the granting agency, but it's rare that that happens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw?
I'd like to make a motion for the adoption of Resolution 2019-44.
Second.
Is there any other discussion, Council, on 44?
I just have one question.
Sure.
So it's, well, I guess I always say that, then I have like 5 questions, so just some questions here. So it's an amount of funds that we get, right? Or is it an amount of homes we can work on with the total amount per home?
So the maximum award is $500,000 per community, which is what we're asking for. And at $43,000 a house, which is what our proposal set up for, that would be 11 homes would be under that $500,000. That'd be the max amount of homes we could do.
And is there let's say some things came in under and there was money left over, does that money go back, or is that able to be spent in the area on other homes that maybe didn't make the cut?
Well, my experience with this, I know Randy, three of us have had experience with this grant before, Director Bucas, myself, and Attorney Cisnowski. Once the homes are selected and those homes are worked, that money is spent on those homes, and if those homes, if we don't spend all the money on those homes, that money is returned back to the state. Is that your experience as well, Randy?
Yes and no. I always come up with these yes and no answers. Yes, the money is generally returned to the state, but if say we choose a house that we only put $20,000 in, so we got another $23,000 left, we can find another house that was part of the program and use that money towards that other house. So what we've done in the past is we've always tried to use every dollar we can.
Alderman Burberry.
Director Zefkoff, the graphic we were supplied with has a red line around an area.
Yes.
Is that there to cover those 11 homes? Is that they're included in that zone?
Yeah, the 11 homes would be included within that geographic area, and that's where we've performed the required surveys as well.
Okay.
That's the project area.
Project area.
So the state requires us to select a project area. It can be anywhere in the city, but it has to meet certain income levels.
Okay, so there's more than just 11 homes. It's other.
And it has to, and we have to have so many owner-occupied homes in the area that meet those income levels as we go forward.
That's right.
Thank you.
So in this, it's better for the grant if there's a commitment of $20,000 from the city. And so my question maybe isn't even possible, but is it? I always believe it's a good thing for the resident to have some skin in the game. And if we're talking about approximately $2,000, is that even possible to do, or is that not part of the? You're shaking your head no, that's not.
You mean the resident providing the match?
I mean, I know the city needs to make the commitment. I'm just wondering if there's any type of.
I think Director Bucas can answer that.
With the grant program, we cannot require a homeowner to put any money towards a project. But what I found in the past is that sometimes there's a lot more work that needs to be done than what the grant money is available for. So the homeowner then will contract with whoever's doing the work on the side to do additional work. So usually the homeowner has some kind of skin in the game, but it may not be directly through the grant.
Well, we have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Busker for the approval of the first part of it, which would be Resolution 2019-44. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Misick.
Aye.
Burberry.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan. Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
And Busker.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. So next is item number 14, which is the adoption of Resolution 2019-45.
Resolution committing local funds for the Community Development Block Grant CDBG program housing rehabilitation application.
Is there anything further on that?
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Any further questions on the dollar commitment?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
motion to adopt Resolution 2019-45.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Busker. Unless there's any further discussion, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Misick.
Aye.
Burberry.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan. Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
And Busker.
Aye.
And that resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. Next, we will move on to item number 15, which is reports from department heads. Finance.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, we mailed our local government certificate to the Department of Transportation regarding our airports for us to be eligible for aviation fuel taxes, money for future projects there. That's something that we hadn't had to do in the past. And hopefully this will open up some new funds for us as well. And secondly, we're starting on the budget this week with water and sewer, so you'll be seeing that coming to you in the near future as well. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is community development.
Thank you, Your Honor. A reminder, we have the comprehensive plan meeting this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. in this room we discussed last week at the COW. That'll allow the Planning Commission, advisory committees, and the public to provide feedback on the existing conditions report you saw last week and on the planning process moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Currently, you're beginning to have some work kind of pop up around the city. I think many people have seen it if they're traveling northbound into town. The Woodside project, the reclamation portion of that project has been complete. They're going to give it a little bit to kind of carry out and strengthen, and then they'll come back and put the surface there on that within the next month, I would guess. I'm not sure on what the exact date is. We'll fit it into their schedule. Another project that's going right now is the airport entrance road project. If anybody heads out Baileyville Road, you'll see it right there. They've begun grading their good couple hundred yards out in there, and then they've got some aggregate base course placed. So that project is beginning to come along quite nice. As for projects that will be beginning soon, the Peck Path construction is scheduled to begin next week, so the week of the 26th. And then the Wild Oats project that was scheduled to start several weeks ago had a contractor decide to back out, and so it has been shifted and delayed until after Labor Day.
Thank you. Fire.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The department conducted blood pressure checks today at Willow Creek Apartments. Tomorrow evening, we have 2 of our fire medics that will be graduating from paramedic school at Swedish American Hospital, Mark Schwartman and Brad Tunick. So we'll be attending that graduation tomorrow night. Department's going to be at the Faith Methodist Block Party this Wednesday. If you're interested in checking out new fire trucks, the fire department is going to be hosting a demo for a new Pierce aerial platform on this Friday at 10 o'clock. We'll be providing an EMS coverage and support for the Colby Smith run. And then also on August 30th, the department will be assisting the Illinois State Police in honoring Trooper Story, displaying the national flag from our aerial device for the bridge dedication. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Police.
Okay. The only thing I have to report is that we will be attending the PTI graduation of new officer Matthew Junius on Thursday in Champaign. Myself and Lieutenant Davis.
Was there something you wanted to say, Lowell? Oh, I thought you were, didn't want to cut you off. Water and sewer.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. No, nothing this evening.
Thank you. IT, did you have something? Nope. Library.
So on nights when I don't have any major things to report, I'm going to offer you a fun fact about the library. So did you know that with Staples closing, we have one of the only full-service areas in town that people can go for all of their copying, printing, and faxing needs? Thank you. Have a good night.
I did not.
That's some pretty valuable information. Thank you, Ashley. And the assistant.
Thank you. So we have 113 properties voluntarily signed up for the pre-disaster mitigation grant now. So it's been about 5 to 10 properties per week since we sent out an initial reminder to homes at the end of June. And then I'll give you an update on the Freeport Complete Count Committee for the census. So we had our second application day event last week. There was about a handful of people who came, and they spoke to U.S. Census Bureau recruiter. His name is Stan. He was very helpful. Some of the people had already applied. Some people came and used the computers at the library. We have our last application day event on August 26th at Highland Community College. It'll be from 1 to 4 p.m. At their conference center. You can access that from parking lot B. And we'll have the recruiter from the Census Bureau there again to answer questions and help people out. Thank you.
Mayor, brief question. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Where do we stand on the timeline now with the pre-disaster mitigation grant?
So we're hoping to submit the grant or hand over the information to Dana Northcott with Region 1 Planning about the end of October. So we're still...
So the initial guidelines, the state, and sorry to interrupt, so the state's going to announce the grant at the, what we've been told by the 1st of October. They're going to require all the grant information in by the end of November. Then they have to have it, because then they want to process it before Christmas. So if they have any problems this year, they can get it turned around and have 30 days after Christmas to make any corrections, because that's where they ran into a problem the last time. That'll be the final closeout submission is the 31st of January going forward, and then we should hear in the July time frame as to how much we've gotten. We are concentrating. We are making a change with we're taking the IDNR grants and the DCO to take care of all the tax trustee properties and the abandoned properties, so that the grant is going to be focused on homes. We're also working with the Housing Authority. They're submitting an engineering grant to look at sites where they can go for Parkview, Park over the over in that same area.
Thank you. Mayor? Yes, do you have a deadline that someone has, a deadline when they can, that's the last day they can sign up?
We do not have a deadline set, no. I would say around mid-October, so we can get the information over to Region 1 Planning.
Yeah, I constantly follow up, Mayor. Because I do have, I had a couple people this weekend, they come up and said, well, can I still go up there? I said, yeah, go Monday. And, you know, so I just tell them you have to be done by October 1st. That way it's completed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So last week, Thursday and Friday, GovHR was here conducting key interviews with key members of the community to start the chief search. As of Friday, we had 12 applicants already for the chief's position from across the United States. It was posted on Tuesday. The position was so. In that short 4-day period, we'd already received 12 applicants. You heard us talk a little bit about the Detmer Bridge. I know that I get questions about this all the time. We have gotten the IDNR study back from this. There were spiked mussels found, which is one of the, they were looking for the black sand-shelled mussel and found the spiked mussel, which is another endangered species. Additionally, they have identified this as a migration area for the Indiana brown bat, which is Detmer Bridge is. So they are going to, they believe it is based upon what they found. So they're going to come out and do some additional studies and as we go forward. So we don't have a date as of yet when this project is going to be released from the state. And that's where we're at.
All right, thank you. Just a couple of things. Last weekend we had cruise night and our first sock hop in the downtown, and it was a huge success, and I think it was well attended, and I don't believe there was any issues. Am I correct on that, Chief?
That's correct.
Good.
Yeah,
And
went
so well done. Thank you to the Downtown Events Group and to those at GFP that did the organization of that, as well as the hundreds of volunteers that it takes. And then just wanted to remind the council that on September 14th, we are having our electronic recycling event. So if any of your constituents call, it is at Highland, and it runs from 9 until noon unless the trucks that we have get filled up before noon. So it's a first come, first served basis. So how that works is when you enter into the parking lot, you pay a $20 cash fee per your vehicle, and you can have up to 7 recycling, electronic recycling things that you can submit Whether it's one or whether it's seven, it's still $20. And those things would be like TVs, computers, monitors, DVD players, that type of thing. So if you want to partake in that, that is September 14th, which is just a few weeks away. And Alderman Brashaw, you are first on that.
Mayor.
Oh, yes.
Would that be posted on Facebook, Freeport Journal Standard, or what? In reference to the recycling?
We've already posted, we've already posted. It has been posted in both the Journal Standard as well as and we will continue to post it as well as Facebook and the webpage.
And it's also in the newsletter from August, so the front page of the newsletter.
Okay.
Alderman Brashaw.
I have nothing this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Alderman Misick.
We do have a Neighborhood Watch the fourth Wednesday, beginning at 6 o'clock. Central Fire.
And Alderman Berberet.
Nothing to report.
Alderman Borneman.
Thank you, Mayor. One update, there is a Makeup Neighborhood Watch meeting for the First Ward, August 27th at 6 p.m. We will have a special guest from the IT department to demonstrate the iWorks system and app for the city to report issues and nuisances. So I encourage you to attend that at the Schwartz Funeral Home. And second, last but not least, Mr. Tommy, congratulations. I heard you got second place in the Special Olympics bowling, rolled a 170, so let's hear it for that man. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Alderman McClanathan.
Nothing further, thank you.
Alderman Ross.
Nothing.
Alderman Parker.
Yes, a couple of things. One is we do have a neighborhood watch meeting next Monday night, 6 o'clock at Lincoln Mall. City manager's going to attend. I'm not sure I will be there. Depends on how things are going. I may have to be out of town, but other planning on it. And then on the fire chief, you mentioned about the flag being at the bridge for Trooper Story. When is that?
It's going to be this Friday. The Representative Chesney's office and the Senator's office put out the press release. I don't have it with me. I apologize at the time. I believe it's in the morning, though.
In the morning, Friday morning?
Yeah.
And which bridge is that at?
It's going to be the Highway 20 interchange.
20 in Springfield?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And Alderman Busker.
Yes, just a reminder, the Fifth Ward Neighborhood Watch meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at the First Church of the Nazarene at Carolyn Empire. Sorry.
Thank you. That leaves us with item number 19, which is public comment. Any public comments? Tommy.
I want to tell you I got second place for the Special Olympics in Rockford.
Well done, Tommy.
And I want to know, so how's that thing by library, the building over by Douglas Street?
Are you talking about the Art Plaza?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're working on that. It's looking really good, isn't it?
Is it going to be done? When they're going to be done, Joe?
Do we have a projected date on finishing the plaza?
They are working on it in stages. It'll come in. They're getting ready for they want to get the splash pad. They've been running, because of the wet spring, they're running behind because it required us to get our storm sewer in before. So we didn't get that in until the March timeframe, or May timeframe. So that delayed everything.
Any other public comment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and esteemed council. I missed you all. I've actually come as a concerned citizen. As I'm sure everybody in the room knows, our glorious state has determined that they want to legalize the narcotic known as marijuana for public use. Believe it or not, they actually made a provision for folks that don't believe that that is a good choice for us. And what this was is it gave municipalities the option to opt out of having those particular businesses and establishments within their city limits. I have a copy of an ordinance from another municipality, the Morton municipality, that you guys that I'll leave here with Manager Crow, that you guys can hopefully bring up on an agenda. If you have not done any research about what the detriments are to these kind of activities taking place within your city limits, then I would encourage everyone here to do so. Colorado has a very extensive report because they were one of the first ones in the nations to do this, and it has literally decimated them in more ways and from more places than they know how to express. I know that there's been some people that have tried to take a balanced approach at this and say, well, you know, it's a person's preference. But one of the things that you need to consider is that right now people are using what is in Illinois a illegal substance. Those folks are not going to just magically at the beginning of next year going to become law-abiding citizens and follow through on all the different laws that are required for them to now use this legal substance that is still federally illegal, but we won't go there. And so what one of the legal requirements is that you cannot use it in public places, you cannot use it in city parks, you cannot use it, but the people that are currently using marijuana illegally are not going to then thusly decide to use it legally. They are probably going to still have a propensity to use it illegally, just using it in public parks or maybe in public places. Secondly, I do not think that Freeport needs to be the destination for people to come and get a product that obviously inebriates them. It would not be to our benefit as a community to have people driving from probably 5 to 6 counties away to come to Illinois to obtain these substances that would probably then cause additional problems for us as a community as well. Again, I totally love everybody that and any choices that they make, but I think that this is good for the public safety for you guys to consider this. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you guys consider taking this up.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments?
My name is Brian Heiler again. Just want to talk about when's the next meeting coming up?
It will be Tuesday,
September 3rd.
September 3rd.
September 3rd, okay. And that'll be when hopefully when the second, reading comes up, and all of you will probably, hopefully vote on the grandfather and hopefully bring us into the city and allow us to keep operating. Like I say, I've got 5 wonderful employees, 2 of them full-time. Right now, it's touch and go when we talk and they say, well, how are things going? And I have to say, well, hey, we're still open. We're still in business. You've got a job. And I'm hoping to continue that. I'd like to say, I know I extended an offer to everyone to please stop out and take a look at my business, talk to the people that are there, and find out what we're about, that it's a relaxed, that it's a nice destination. I mean, people go to Dubuque, they want to stop at the casino. Eventually, Rockford's going to have one. They're going to go to Rockford. There's people that want to gamble. We've got a lot of events that go on in Freeport. They come for these events, daytime events. At night, they may be looking for a place to go, and we're trying to offer them a nice, clean environment. And when you see our decor, it's also going to give them a touch of Freeport. It's going to show them some history of Freeport, and that's what we're trying to be all about. Like I say, I offer everybody, stop out, take a look, see what we have to offer, and hopefully you'll do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any other public comments?
Ben Heiler, owner of Silver Creek Gaming Lounge. Just to make it simple, you know, Attorney Cox said today, it's black and white. If you guys are in the county, you can get the licenses in the county. The city has no say as far as licenses. So the real moral question here is it right to have two businesses who followed the laws, got the appropriate licenses, invested over $15,000 into their business and however much more in the other business, and now you guys are annexing the two businesses in and pretty much saying, hey, we don't want to grandfather them in. We're going to punish them and not have them be in business anymore. This is not succession planning. We are not discussing succession planning, estate planning. We're talking grandfathering two businesses, plain and simple. Whether or not the language set forth in that liquor amendment is appropriate. Licenses that were obtained in Stevenson County prior to the annexation should be grandfathered in, okay? They should be grandfathered in. They should not be punished because they followed the laws, followed the rules, got the licenses, invested the money, and took the risk, okay? So I want you to think about that until the next city council meeting. Is it right to just punish two businesses that followed the rules? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Then we will move on to item number 20, which is executive session. Madam Clerk, could you please read this?
Pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C2, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C11, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
Is there a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Borneman, seconded by Alderman McClanathan to enter into executive session. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Brashaw?
Aye.
Misick?
Aye.
Berberet?
Aye.
Borneman?
Aye.
McClanathan?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
And Busker?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.